Hello, everyone. I hope you're having an awesome day. I'm Justin Ryan, and you're watching a new episode of Spatial Builders. This series is all about bringing the coolest visionOS developers to you, hearing their stories, learning about their apps, learning where this platform is going. And so, without further ado, I would love to introduce you to our next guest. His name is Daniel, and he is coming to us with an awesome project called STAGEit. And so, Daniel, so excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Hi, Justin. Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be chatting to you. And it's great to be chatting to an AVP evangelist because I think you like us, think this is an astonishing product and it's just opening so many doors.
So many doors. And yeah, I feel the same way. An amazing product. I think that it's a small group right now of people that are just incredibly passionate about it. But I'm hoping
Yeah.
soon that, haters become lovers and people start to see ultimately what this platform is capable of. And that's ultimately one of the reasons that got me so excited to have you on the show today, Daniel, because your team's building something pretty great. And let's maybe just go there. What are you building for the Vision Pro?
Well, quite a lot of things, but we've been working on the AVP since it was released in February, and before we got to stage it as a product, we did a bunch of R&D. So it's like throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, see what sticks, and this kind of ranged from teleoperation of robots, which we did, and we took to a show, took the AVP
Mm.
there. Uh, and then actually that's really interesting because you've seen people like Nevada and Tesla have started to use the Apple Vision Pro to train their AI for robots. So we did a bunch of stuff like that. We worked with portals. Really loved Apple's demonstration of the dinosaur
Yes, that is so cool.
variant video. We really loved that idea of cutting a hole in your space and being able to explore this kind of other space. And so we did a load of work around that. Uh, Starting to come to this, trying to understand what doors does this open, because when we've used the MetaQuest, we've used all these other devices, but the challenges that they have, and they're great products, their fidelity is pretty low, the pass through is decent but average, and there's going to be a load of haters for that, but it's true.
Yep.
And then the other challenges with those devices is the amount you can explore is limited. You can only move something like 30 feet before you hit the edge of the device's ability to explore in AR. So we weren't sure what we were going to build, but we knew that we were going to build something because we knew that the device was going to be something special. And it is, and it's very much obviously a first version, as you say. It's got a limited audience at the moment, but it is opening up some pretty incredible and magical doors. So anyway, let me rewind a bit. After all this R&D, playing around, going to shows with the device while we kind of talk about our software development expertise, and I can tell you a bit about what we do later, I guess. We thought we were reached out to by a guy called Sean Hayworth,
Okay.
and he's a production designer in Hollywood. So it sounds quite glamorous. It is pretty glamorous. We were
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
excited. Here we're sitting in a little town in England, and I get this email from this guy called Sean, and I do a little bit of googling. Who's Sean? And then I find, yeah, production designer of some big films, Deadpool and
Oh, wow.
Transformers, Sonic 2. So I was thrilled. Uh, so
Yeah,
he
I
said,
would
"Hey,
be.
I saw one of your YouTube apps where YouTube videos where you're placing some stuff in the real world, because we'd started to build this interacting with 3D models, bringing in content. Felt like it could be a presentation content. Jigs was already out there doing it a certain way, but we felt like it
Mhm.
was a bit limited. You also had to work through their workflow. So we had a chat with him, and StageIt was somewhat born, or at least crystallized from all the random things that we'd been doing out of that. And it was this: hold on, let's democratize spatial computing slash spatial CAD, um, because what we know in our experience in the world so far, although we haven't worked heavily in all of these industries, is that people do have 3D content. People have mixed ability to create 3D models, but you can go buy a load of things online and whatever. What we want to do is create an experience where people can bring their own content in, or use our asset library ultimately. But ideally, it started with bringing in your own content in to plan something spatial.
Okay.
And so with the movie use case, it's and the use case, I can share with you the exact use case that excited us was when they were filming Deadpool, and they had that roadway scene at the beginning. Right at the beginning, all
Hmm.
the cars crash and he shoots his bullets. Pretty famous scene. They were out. They had dozens of people on site planning for that. They had the road closed. They couldn't close the road for very long, so they had to plan it somewhere else. They had a load of
Mm.
forklifts, a load of cars, and they were moving stuff around in full scale, measuring it and all this kind of stuff. Um, and that's a real challenge, and it's expensive. You've got to fly everybody there and you've got to have all the physical equipment there. And he said, look, you go to and so we went to a film studio with Sean later in the year to go and try this out. Two of you wearing AVPs, you can just do this together. You load your scenes up, and providing you have some interaction with the models, um, that's where we came to. So yeah, we developed this sort of spatial CAD tool that allowed you to bring in your 3D assets, and it gave you some sort of I'd say basic, but it's got more advanced over the year. But some fundamentally important um, CAD tools, so scaling, moving, rotating, locking, all the things that you kind of get to allow you to build a scene. And we went, and so that's where we started.
Wow. So, first of all, I think the naming of this is the proper name, STAGEit, because knowing the backstory, that makes a lot of sense. And I could easily see the value of if you're a producer or a director and you want to stage things virtually before you go there, and the ability that your tool has to do exactly that is off the charts.
So it was from there that the catalyst was that works really well for this industry. And for about 2 months, we really focused on what does the film industry need,
Yeah.
and tailored the tool around that. And so it's got some cool things in it. But then it was very quickly evolved after that, because we started to talk to landscapers, architects, theatre, and then even more interestingly, just more recently, into big industry.
Mm.
So we're talking with an organisation in the UK where they might be working with a very big project in Europe where they've got to plan a massive infrastructure project. I've got to be careful with what I say, but
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
big infrastructure. So imagine building a big bridge, right?
Okay.
One of the key challenges is visualizing that up front, planning the logistics. Trucks. Lorries for my UK audience, trucks for my
Okay.
American audience.
Yep.
Here. We're going to bring a big crane in there. It's going to unload the kit here. And they're saying the planning around that is really difficult because it's so spatial. And so historically, the tools have been quite limited. So we've realized that there's this, it's the fundamentally, this tool works for anybody that needs to visualize something spatially, and it gives them that hindsight beforehand. They can plan it all either remotely using SharePlay, or they can go on site and see things in situ. Um, and it's just really exciting. It's really exciting to be part of that and to suddenly find that we kind of got this new tool thanks to the AVP that it could really benefit a huge number of certainly business users.
Daniel, it sounds like you've got so many incredible projects that you and your team are working on. And it sounds like prior to this, you were working on some pretty impressive projects too. I'm excited about what the Vision Pro could unlock with robotics. I'm excited for what this is unlocking here for these spaces. And something I hear quite often from maybe the comment section from individuals who maybe don't see it the same way we do is like, what would you even use the Vision Pro for? I can't do
Yeah.
VR gaming. And I think it's so important for people to understand that this is so much more than VR
Yeah.
gaming, and what this truly can unlock for the enterprise as well as for the average consumer. Game changer. So I love that you're highlighting a couple of the best use cases I think that already exist for the Vision Pro. So you sent me a video, and I know you posted a video recently that got quite a bit of traction, and I think that's ultimately what caught my attention again, because I had downloaded your app maybe months ago and played around with like a virtual warehouse inside my office. But then I saw your video and the visual of this high-rise building coming up in the certain spot where they were planning to build this. Can you speak about maybe that video? Because I'm planning on sharing it here with the audience as well.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things, and I think everyone says this about the Apple Vision Pro, is to convey what it's like in a 2D video,
Yeah,
right? Uh,
100%.
just just the basic functionality. Until you've tried it, you have no clue how magical it is and
So
how
true.
quality it is. But with STAGEit, I think one of the key storytelling is this idea of scale. So you can plan things kind of small, and you can build things on your desktop virtually, on this tabletop experience, and then you can scale that up and view it full size. I wanted to show how, with architectural planning, where there's so many things to take into consideration, such as light, shadow casting, what the impact is going to be on the environment around it. I wanted to find an empty lot somewhere where I could show a number of different examples of
Mm,
buildings being turned on. So you
yeah.
had that magic of it, and now it is. And one of them was that really tall, high skyscraper, which is a really wonderful. It's an Adobe asset that we've just sort of drawn up and positioned, and you can position it using kind of a marker, or you can position it manually, and then you can just switch it on and off to see what does the impact of it what's the impact of it there in that on that site. And so that was a video really to try and show that working in the real world, but also try and give a context of how this works at scale. Because, as I said earlier, with the MetaQuest and other devices, there's limits how far you can move before it stops working. With the Apple Vision Pro, our Sky Dome. So when you put a Sky Dome over your scene, so that's the extent
Yep.
of steam. I think it's 3 kilometers. So you can once, if the weather's nice, so it doesn't work so well in clouds. It does tend to shift. But if the weather's nice, you can walk hundreds of meters away from your scene and it stay in situ. And that for this large scale planning is something that nothing else can do.
I love your call out too in the video when you're standing at the window. And
Yeah,
so just imagine if you're building a property, whether it's a home or an office building or whatever it may be, and you get to actually see what your window view would look like standing at the actual place of where that would exist. It's
yeah.
fascinating, Daniel. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, that was, I left and I left that right to the end of the video, and I kind of regret it because there was a number of comments on, man, when we got to the looking out the window bit, my mind was blown. It's like, I don't know which bit to blow your mind most with. The 3D scene coming out of the 2D model, the building turning on and off. No, looking out the window. And the other thing is that we built into that is the STAGEit Sun, and it is worth a shout out. So
Okay.
this is basically the ability to enable a sun in your scene, and you can set it to your location and your time of day, and it will put the sun in the right place in the sky. And when visualizing, certainly when you're outside or when you're inside, and you're trying to understand how shadows are going to affect
Hmm.
um, what you're doing. So I'm going to put up a pagoda here. What's that going to be like at 3 o'clock in July afternoon? Is it going to put a shadow over the pool? STAGEit allows you to do that. And so we've kind of thought um, as to try and build it so that the sun helps the scene. Firstly, it gives shadows onto the building, so it means it really blends in. And if you set it to the right time, it looks. That's what I did in that video. That you'll notice the shadows and the lighting on that
Hmm.
building are perfect,
I saw
and that's
that
because
actually. Yeah.
the sun in the right place, so that it. And then I adjusted the settings and the temperature of the sun because there's a bunch of little modifications you can make, um, and they're not too complex. They're kind of basic controls, but enough control to allow you to add that stuff in. Yeah. Anyway, we're
Wow.
very.
It's the cool details like that that completely change the experience. And that's now that you mention it, the video that you showed, the building does look so perfectly placed and that shadow. And now I get it. So
Yep.
thank you. Thanks for building the sun as well in STAGEit. Wow. Daniel, you're a fascinating guest. This is a fascinating project, truthfully. Um, and I think maybe one of the challenges that I see in visionOS and just the app stores, there's a lot of creators kind of building on some similar projects. And so what is some of the ways that we're differentiating our apps, and you've explained that so well today of what makes STAGEit so special and so unique. So when you think about maybe the next stage of STAGEit, no pun intended, but as you think about the next stage for this software that you're building, do you mind sharing a couple things of what you're working on today, if you are?
We've got loads going on, absolutely loads
Okay.
going on. So, so there are some fundamental tools that we want to add that we know are missing from the app, and it's just because we've got a couple of developers working on this pretty much flat out. We're responding to real world early users' needs. It's a first version, so it has bugs at times. Every software does.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
doing that, we've got one of the key frustrations I have with STAGEit is I can't group. So if I bring in a load of different assets, I can't group them and treat them as one. We've got a bit of re-engineering to do around that to make that work, but that's absolutely one of the things. So grouping assets, and we've kind of also released it without an undo feature, which can be slightly annoying if you've moved something and you want to just quickly move it back. So there's some small things like that that we are working on in terms of basic features. We've recently added export to USDZ. That was a massive update, and now you can also precisely enter into the details panel values. That was one of the big asks. We're working on environments right now, and we're looking at something super exciting. So we recently added a feature which allowed you to add an environment, and that's basically an enclosing holder for the scene you're building.
Yeah.
So the context for that would be you're not where you are. So it's not mixed reality. You're maybe going more virtual reality because you're trying to build something, and then you can take it there and you can turn the environment off and see it in the real world. But when you're not there, you want the around it. So we added that. We are now working on a workflow where you can add an environment of anywhere in the world.
Wow.
We were doing some experimentation. I've been doing it just today. I actually killed my computer trying to do it right before the school. Trying to find out how high I can render the Black Canyon and the Grand Canyon. Now, I need to be really clear here for anybody watching this, and I've had some comments already on our environments. Apple's environments that you get on the home screen are super, super well done and very expensive.
Yes.
They also don't allow you to explore them. And that's because what they do is when you were in them, you can't walk around because you can go out of the environment. That's because what they've done is really clever, and they've designed it like a game designer would do. High fidelity model right where you're at. The palm trees, I'm pretty sure, are 2D, but they look 3D, but they're just 2D I forget it, banners. My developers know what that's called. And then as you get further away, the whole model gets lower res, and then it's sky dome stuff. So it loads. It's really efficient and it's really cleverly made. But if you move, the illusion breaks. We have the challenge in STAGEit that we can't go that high fidelity because the device would explode. We've pushed it to its limits. We know what it can take. So we can create sort of, I guess, the sort of quality you get on Google Maps where you do a satellite view. And that's the sort of concept we're working with. But I think it's really powerful because it means you can. I was just before the call, I was standing in that crater in Arizona, that big old crater that one of my designers had sent me that model, which we created. So we're hoping to release that as environments pre-built, and then ultimately allow the to go generate me this environment, and STAGEit will just draw it around you. It won't be, as I say, it will be medium to low res because that's what the device can cope with, but it will give you enough to where if you then put your house in it, the mountains will be the mountains, and they will be fine. Anything close up will look a bit blurry because that's what it is. So that's exciting. We are building in right now. You can only explore the scene, so flying is going to be coming very soon. So a bit like the what's that thing with the square? Minecraft.
Yeah.
You can fly, you can kind of build your scene, and at the minute, if you want to go upstairs, you have to lower the scene down.
Yep.
The flying will be in soon. We've got a cool feature and a way of navigating your scene. So yeah, what else have we got? Cameras. Although we're working with Apple on this, for the film industry in particular, it's great to add cameras into it, but this can work for anybody. So you could record. So the app already supports animation. So if you've got animated models, they will just work. If you're on the R&D version, which is our public beta, and so anyone that fancies being in on that can get in touch, that allows you to trigger animation so that if you want to preview how something's going to look animating, so maybe you've got an industrial line of machines that are animated
Mm.
and you want to see how they look.
Yep.
You can send triggers to that. So and then kind of going back, that means you can then put cameras in and you can record sort of previs of whatever that is. So that works for the film industry, it works for industry, or if you're just creating a scene where you want to output effectively a camera with a certain focal length, and you've got a camera here and camera there and camera there, you can output that and then you can stitch it together, and you sort of like, here's a thing I filmed in STAGEit.
Wow.
That's off the top of my head, those are the first few things. Uh,
That's a lot of
but it's,
things.
yeah, well,
That's
there's
a lot
more.
of things.
There's more. I don't know what they all are. It's every day we wake up and go, oh man, it would be awesome if it did this.
Wow. That's amazing. Fascinating too. And I think even just the environments, as you mentioned, maybe they're like Google satellite imagery today. I think that's enough for right now in this iteration. And I imagine, as the processors and some of these things advance inside of the headset, that's going to unlock a whole nother opportunity there for just the
Yeah,
refinement inside of this app. But wow, that's fascinating. So ultimately, you could have basically some workflows of I've got a warehouse and I want to see what that animated, pipeline looks like, and it's capturing different video recordings from different angles, different perspectives inside of that 3D scene. And then you could also be walking around through that with your Vision Pro on and capturing a first person view, a
yeah.
perspective. Wow, this is cool. I'm going to be spending a lot more time in your app, Daniel. That's what I know right now.
I'll get you the R&D version so you can get hold of
Oh,
cameras.
I'd love it.
Problem with the cameras at the moment is we have a contact at Apple that we work with, and the challenge we have, and this is where the device and the OS is kind of hitting the walls for us.
Okay.
My view, Apple have launched this as a B2C device for consuming amazing content, uh, and it does that really well, right?
Hmm.
And the content that Apple offers is brilliant, and there's some beautiful apps out there where they've made them all about the experience.
That's right.
We're trying to make it. We're trying to extend it into the B2B market. That's the creating a productive tool out of that, and there's not many apps on there that I think are kind of are doing what we're trying to do. Um, but we hit limits, and that's one of our biggest challenges. Is that we need to, because we allow the user to add their own content, do their own thing, build their own scene at will. We need to somehow manage that, because if you add too much, it will just the device will just reboot as your memory goes out. I mean,
Yeah.
if you so I've got some hot tips of what not to do to make your staged scene. Um, but yeah, with cameras, these are really basic at the moment, because effectively we have to redraw the scene twice. So if you've got a very big scene
Hmm.
that's already pushed
Makes
twice,
sense.
each
Yep.
camera, if it's running live, needs to redraw it. So we're working about some. So the way we've done that is, right. Okay, how can we create a workflow for the user that makes sure they don't run two cameras at the same time? Because that
Hmm.
would kill it. That would three draws for the same scene. Um, and it's like when we added lights, we wanted to keep it super simple for the user to go, right, well, this is a spotlight. You can make it hard or soft, wide or narrow, bright or not,
Yep.
color, and you can tell it how far to reach. If you turn on shadows, that's great. The more detail you have in the scene, the harder the device will have to work. So use
That's
shadows
right.
with care. Yeah.
Yeah, I've played around with the lights in there. I think there was maybe a couple examples of maybe some mannequins and some clothes and some tables, and you could put the spotlights up above, and it was fascinating just to see the movement of that and how it processed. And I did get to a point where I could hear the fans starting to pick up inside of the headset, which truthfully, it doesn't happen that often. Like I'm actually pretty impressed with how little I hear those running, which is good because it's right next to your head, so you don't want to hear it all
Yeah.
the time. But I have had instances where that's occurred. So walk us through. Let's say I'm interested in the app. I download it. First of all, if you haven't checked it out, it's on the App Store, visionOS App Store. Download it, give it a try. But let's say I've done that, Daniel. I've downloaded it. How do I now get my file into there so I can walk around it? How easy is that process?
Yeah, the biggest challenge with getting your files in is kind of the UDSZ workflow.
Yeah.
And so the best workflow at the moment, I think, that's out there, if you have a Mac, um, a no-brainer is to download Reality Converter as a
Okay.
free app from, and it effectively basically sets up your models. Now, if you are building models from scratch, you want to use PBR materials. That's kind of a fundamental. If you're buying models, you kind of want to buy them ideally with PBR material setup.
Okay.
Because that's going to be the most efficient. It's going to work the best. Things to avoid in your models is lots of transparency or occlusion. So if you've got a model and you've put a load of windows in it, and there's a way to do transparency that's really efficient in Apple, but a lot of the ways that existing models are, they're not done that way, and so that kind of really tests the device. So ideally, you want to avoid transparency or use Apple's way, and we'll need to look up. I can get you a link about how that works.
Okay.
And the other thing is occlusion. So sometimes you'll get a tree, which is a load of planes, and then they'll have an occlusion map on it, which basically cuts out the leaves. And that works. It does work. And we've had a lot of trees in there. It quickly taxes the device. And as you look around, you can see the scene wobbling around. So those are the kind of things you need to do. So PBR models. FBX is a good starting point. So if you're purchasing models, actually, let me rewind a bit. We have found that Blender, and it's a free tool, so that's useful, is a really good tool for your starting point, either to import models you've already got or to build your models from scratch. Apple are supporting and working with Blender and Maya for the UDSZ export as a first-class exporter. So you should get first. So that's kind of the best approach. And effectively, import your model that you've got, FBX, GLB, Blender, whatever. Get that into Blender, or go straight into Reality Converter. The reason I say sometimes going to Blender first is good is because it allows you to modify the model. It allows you to identify things that you don't need and delete them. Or fix the transparency issues. And then effectively you want to export it. If you're working from Blender, it's USD-C, and then you drop that file into Reality Converter, and it'll ask you to remap the PBR materials. Alternatively, a GBL or an FBX, or if it's a GBL, it might all come in together. And an FBX is also, you can just drag and drop it straight into Blender and export it as USD-C. So that's the workflow that we're finding works best for us at the moment. And Blender's a free tool and is obviously a really good starting point. Oh, and here's the top tip of the day. Blender's quite complex.
Yeah.
ChatGPT knows Blender inside out. Take a screenshot, send it to Chat, and say, I'm struggling to do this. What should I do? And you'd be amazed at how step-by-step ChatGPT can do. So that's a key thing.
I was just thinking about that because I've seen even Google's Gemini experimental model is doing something very similar. I saw someone uploaded a photo of Morgan Freeman and said, recreate this in 3D, and it was almost identical. And that would have taken a 3D artist a lot of time. So
yeah.
Wow.
Oh, and SketchUp. SketchUp is an amazing app for architectural stuff, by the way. We found that, and that just goes straight to USD-Z. Sweet as enough.
Awesome. Well, thank you for walking us through your project, the inspiration behind it, the story behind it, working first with film and now branching into all these other industries, which is really fascinating. I'm going to spend some more time in the app, Daniel. I'll also tell the audience here, as I mentioned on this video, I've been using it for the last couple months. It's really well done. It's a very polished app. He mentioned bugs, but I have yet to find a bug yet, Daniel. So I expect every new software on visionOS is going to have some, but I think it's one of those apps that's pretty polished already. And the fact that we have the opportunity to create a 3D, object or a lot of objects and place it inside the headset and walk around it, and in the future be able to capture videos of this while you're walking, it's so cool. So highly recommend it. Definitely check it out. Daniel, if someone wanted to get in touch with you or with your team, what would be the best method to do that?
Yeah, if I go to our website, so the team that built it is a company called Compsoft. So we can chuck a link, I guess, in the description. But if you go in there, drop us a line, mention that you saw it on this video, and because we're early days, we're giving hyper support to all our customers. So you get a pretty personal response. If you're having a challenge, we want to fix it because we want this tool to be awesome for our users.
Awesome. Well, Daniel, it's good to get to know you. I look forward to getting to know you even more. as the visionOS progresses and as your app progresses. Would you be okay with us staying in touch and me maybe reaching out to you for maybe a future segment of maybe you with a couple other creators in this space?
Yeah, totally. We'd love to be love to stay in touch. Love what you're doing. So it's nice to be, as I say, talking to existing evangelists for this product.
Well, I've really appreciated the time, Daniel. Thank you for those kind words, and I'll be in touch soon, okay?
Yeah, thanks, Justin.
Thank you, everyone, for watching this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. I got a lot of value out of this, a lot of new things I learned as well today. So, Daniel, thank you for that. And with that, I'll go ahead and say, hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll catch you on the next one.